Shalom. I was on EA Dawa's chill stream on Sunday and just hanging around and uh well you can see what happened. I'm gonna stop and make comments, but yeah. Um the link is in the description, and Khalil gave me permission to upload his stuff if I put a link in the description. But I thought I would do it with commentary rather than just download it and cut it up and thing. And while the description is kind of clickbaity, it also kind of isn't. It was an interesting time. I look, I'm fine with stuff like this. I didn't mind it. I didn't mind the contentious nature of it. Towards the end, I just thought that I appealed to Khalil because Khalil was he's fair, and he realized that I was answering and the guy was just BSing. So
Anyone.
Who?
Hold on. We gotta hear Jacob's impression.
Oh yeah, Jacob. Let's do your impressions
Yep, sure. Go ahead.
what?
of anything.
I don't know. Whatever you do, whatever impression that you have.
Sorry, sorry, I don't do impressions.
You don't do impressions?
Can't do a New York Jew.
Oi! Oi!
You're a Jew yourself, so I mean that's gonna be easy.
L'chaim.
Shalom.
L'chaim.
Oh, shalom, bro. Come on. Shalom, ashlomcha, tofamot.
What was the? I think he said tova me'od, which means he's been spending too much time with women. Last thing you tried to say?
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
How good is your Hebrew?
Forget about it.
How good is your Hebrew? Jacob?
My modern Hebrew's not so great. My biblical Hebrew's okay.
Okay. So if you were to
You
read
go to
the Bible
classes
in
when you were
Hebrew, like how far would you go if like you read the Bible in Hebrew? Like, could you read all of it? I don't know. I haven't like heard much about you.
Well, I mean, if I'm just reading, I could read it. I mean, would I understand every word without looking it up? Not sure every single word. But I mean, my channel is filled with me translating to English from the Hebrew.
So like if you read, for example, the Shema Israel thing, like can you do it in Hebrew, like and understand literally everything from it?
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
So like you understand it all. Like,
אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך ובביתך ובחדר ובשוכבך ובקומך. Yeah, I know every single word I just recited.
okay,
Carson,
cool.
can you translate?
What?
Translating it is actually a lot harder than just understanding, because, for example, that first line, I every time I translate it, I leave the last three words, however you want to translate those, because different places translate. This is Deuteronomy 6:5. Like, if you look on,
doesn't do it justice.
I don't need translation. I can give you something better. Bismillah.
It sounded like a tongue twister.
كل الله أحد الله صمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
Sadaqallahu al-azim.
sounds good so far to me.
Yeah. And like there are of course like professional reciters that can do the job as well. So you can hear them. Like for example, there's Abdul Basit Abdul Samad. Like he recites it beautifully.
Abdul Basit, bro.
Yeah, he's like he's like one of, if not the most popular Quran reciter, man. Like no Muslim doesn't know who Abdul Basit Abdul Samad is.
Well, there are some.
Very low patience levels. He's slow for you.
Yeah, well, yeah. But he has.
I would be very surprised if there's anybody that no Muslim doesn't know. Obviously, there's a lot of Muslims out there.
Yeah, he has tajweed and taftil as well. Like,
yeah, he's like the tajweed reciter.
And he does taftil as well.
Jacob.
That was the problem I always had with the Hebrew. I can't chant it. I just musically I can't remember the chanting. I can't. It's just not something in my brain of song. So yeah.
Okay.
Jacob, do you understand some Arabic? Or
some Arabic? Yeah, I mean I speak Farsi. And so there's a lot of words from Arabic in Farsi, and obviously the Semitic roots from Hebrew transfer. So there's a lot of Arabic that I can understand.
Yeah, but like fun fact, like Hebrew, when it correct me if I'm wrong, basically, like, I'm open to be corrected, but like what I've heard about like the history of like Hebrew. So like it was like lost, and like there was like I think Arab scholars that actually helped.
Okay, so this is the thing with Hebrew being lost. Hebrew was not used as a Hebrew wasn't lost. Hebrew was not used as just a language that people used. partially because it's a liturgical language, and people spoke. My family spoke Aramaic. Other families spoke Yiddish, right? That doesn't mean people didn't learn Hebrew, understand Hebrew. They didn't speak it as a common language, and part of the actual thing with secular Zionists was they created modern Hebrew because they wanted to return to speaking Hebrew, which honestly was a problem, and to some extent continues to be a problem. For example, the word for electricity in Farsi is barq, and in modern Hebrew is barak, and I believe it's something similar in Arabic. And part of the problem with that is that I mean, this is a word used in the Bible, and to use it in the way that it is used in modern Hebrew is actually slightly problematic. That's why religious, especially the ultra Orthodox, the Rebbe of Chabad, for example, never used the word barak as electricity. He would just use electricity and transliterate it into the Hebrew when he was writing in Hebrew. So that's the stuff I didn't want to get into as far as modern Hebrew as opposed to biblical Hebrew, rabbinic Hebrew, right? So Hebrew was never lost, but Hebrew was not used as a common language, and there are people who still refuse to use it as a profane language, despite the fact that modern Hebrew has in fact kind of taken over, except in certain Hasidic, very, very strongly anti-Zionist Hasidic groups. Modern Hebrew is pretty much everybody who's serious about Judaism learns modern Hebrew. So that's what I didn't bother exactly explaining.
Helped like with bringing back the Hebrew language. Like
Oh,
Hebrew
okay,
has,
yes.
has
Modern
some roots from
Hebrew.
Arabic, like that are like similar to Arabic. Like there are some
Modern
roots
Hebrew. So when they constructed modern Hebrew, which I am not a huge fan of, we won't get into my whole religious anti-Zionist thing. But when they started creating modern Hebrew, they used a lot of Arabic roots, and in order to construct modern Hebrew. Yes.
So for example, like Shema is like Isma in Arabic. Like Shema is like listen. That's like
So
Isma.
there's a
So
lot of
So a lot of times you'll notice if you know Hebrew, you'll notice that certain roots translate in certain ways. For example, in Islam they'll say Quds, right, and that's referring to Kodesh, right, and that's why Sama, right, Shema. So there's a lot of the shins turn into sins in same thing with 5, right? Chamesh in Hebrew becomes chums or chamsa in Arabic. So once you learn which letters, and actually you can even do this with other languages as well, which are related. You might want to take a look at the Loom of Language, which is slightly, I mean, it's a book on linguistics that's slightly annoying because of the author, but talks about this type of stuff, and you can see the relationship between Arabic, Aramaic, Amharic, and Hebrew.
Similar word is Sama. Sama is listening, like like the general thing in Arabic,
So,
for example.
Both Arabic and Hebrew use what are called 3 radical roots. So if you know which radical corresponds to which radical in Hebrew and in Arabic, you can actually understand a lot just by knowing which roots corresponds to which. They're very similar. Same thing with Aramaic and Amharic. All Semitic languages use the same roots.
Okay, so I really am confused, like, sometimes with this one thing. You guys like say Hashem, and then like in Hebrew you say Adonai. So like, what's the difference between Hashem and Adonai? I
Okay,
still
so
don't get it.
Hashem literally means the name.
The name, just like in Arabic.
Oh,
It's
you have a cover, right?
yeah.
Like,
Right.
Yeah.
And the word Adon means like Lord or Sir. Like if you're ever in Israel and you're trying to get the cabbies' attention, you'll say Adoni, which basically means Mister, right?
Oh, okay.
It's like the Greek
and-
kudos, which means Lord or Sir. Yeah.
So that's how it became kurios, and why in English translations you'll have the large Lord instead of the Tetragrammaton, because we never try even attempt to pronounce the Tetragrammaton, and so we will refer to it obliquely. Sometimes we will use the word ado, and which we are very careful not to mention God's name unless, well, part of it is actually, you guys were talking about wudu before, right? Part of it is also just not profane uses of God's name just anywhere.
What about someone named Elijah? How do you deal with that?
Eliyahu. So yeah, so there are jokes about that, but
Okay, so I'll tell this. So in Haredi things, they make fun of people who are so religious that if their name is Eliyahu, they will say Kelly Kaku instead. Because but this thing of not saying God's name, I did a whole video on it. I did a whole video if you're interested.
of how, so the whole question becomes, how is the Tetragrammaton pronounced? And there are people who will say that Yahoo is actually how it should be pronounced, but we don't believe that, and scholars tend to disagree with that, because they say that it was not used. The name itself was not completely used in the name, even though Eliyahu means my God is God, and but it's not. I mean, even most scholars who try to reconstruct how it should be said, they don't believe Yahoo is correct.
So could you tell us? Sorry, so could you tell us, like, why is it prohibited for you guys to say God's name? Like, cause like I find it weird, like why wouldn't you say it? Like, it's, I mean, of course it's the holy name of God. Like the holy name of God shouldn't just like be pronounced like
right. So,
but like I find it weird that like even like when you're, of course, like the name of God is Allah, like, and like to you guys it's that.
Elohim,
but, like,
I usually will not say the word Eloah, which is the same word. I usually would not say that, except when reciting verses. This is an ancient practice in like, I mean, whatever you want to call it.
I didn't want to get into the whole Jewish and Israelite whatever thing, but it's obviously an ancient thing within Israel that precedes Christianity, that of being careful how you treat the name of God.
Well, as far as Judaism, or God's names were and continue to only be used in very particular circumstances. Like most of the names, I will only use either in prayer or when I'm reciting verses. And the Tetragrammaton itself was only mentioned by the high priest in the temple on the Day of Atonement. And I mean, we have historical records from other, including like the Romans, which explain this practice, and we believe that the Tetragrammaton, how to pronounce it correctly, has in fact been lost, and that's why we don't actually try to pronounce.
I was thinking of Josephus. I'm pretty sure Josephus talks about the Jewish unwillingness to mention the names of God, and obviously with the Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff, we see similar practices.
That name even in prayer at all. And we have theological reasons for that as well. But the ineffability of God is a basic belief in our religion, that ultimately, even when you call in God's name, you are not really referring to God, because God being infinite cannot be contained in some name. And so calling God the name, Hashem, is actually a self-referential way of recognizing that no matter which name we call God, we can never truly know and understand God.
Interesting.
I'll be right back. I gotta go have a woman make me a sandwich.
Okay. So Jacob, do you find it? I'm trying to ask you like a lot of questions, but I find it like okay. So do you find it like weird that Christians actually use the name like they say it. Like sometimes the Christians they say it.
So this is the funny thing. Like Christians, so this is a new thing with Christians that's only a couple of hundred years old, because frankly, the egalitarian Trinity, I mean, I don't know how much you know about the history of the Trinity and stuff, but like the egalitarian Trinity is actually pretty new. More older Trinitarians tended to have Jesus as like a second God, but not exactly like the first God. And it's like, whatever, it's polytheism. But
Totally agree.
I agree,
Absolutely
man. I
right,
agree.
bro.
Like I mean,
You're
like
absolutely right.
they're less ditchy temple to say, oh, they're all one God, but like they, you know, it's like their natures of God and whatever. But no, just no.
Look, Muslims and Jews believe in the same God. Christians do not. Vast majority of them. So they've started saying the name of the Father, which other Christians didn't do, because they want to give an equivalent type of respect as they give to Jesus. And if you were to say that somehow Jesus' name is less than the Father.
So that was the comment I made, that Muslims and Jews believe in the same God, which caused the stir, because there are definitely people in his audience who do not believe that. They and that's how they excuse their animosity towards Jews.
Father's name, then and that's why they got themselves all in a bind of what do they do now. But when you look back, I mean, it's all kinds of their problems causing them to do further things which are silly and not being able to match with history.
Why do they use the English name Jesus then? Like, why not use the original name?
They Romanized it for some reason as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I've heard so many Christians make the point, like, yeah, they use Yahweh and say that is the only name of God, and it can't, like, it's not found in the Quran, so like, the Quran can't be true. But even though, like, you have like something like Eliyahu, like the who in there would be like Kullu Allahu. We say Kullu Allahu or Allahu Alam. Like, we have that who in Allah.
Yeah, this is, I mean, we get into this thing where people are making lay understandings of trying to bring the Arabic and the Hebrew together. And honestly, there are enough people who know both Hebrew and Arabic. I don't feel comfortable even entertaining these things, since I don't know Arabic. And frankly, I don't think anybody who doesn't know both languages, I mean, there are enough people who study the languages together, that coming up with these theories on the fly, I think, is a mistake.
The Quran.
Yeah,
that's not exactly the equivalent. But
how come? If you take
Allah,
can you explain the name?
So the Tetragrammaton is a version of the verb to be in Hebrew. I don't know Arabic. Actually, I wanted to ask you guys, in Arabic, is there a present tense of the verb?
As I could understand them, it seems like Arabic doesn't have the verb to be at all, which would be very, very interesting, and especially because of what I'm reading with Robert Eisenman's book, James, the Brother of Jesus, because he believes that basically the Muslims are Christian Jews, and if they stopped even saying things like ehyeh, which is a possibility. Like, I could imagine that if Jews continued speaking Hebrew, which we didn't, we might stop like saying words like ehyeh at all, or haya, right? In that being very clear, very thing, and then talking about Allah, right? Yeah, so I would be interested to hear somebody who's studied these things, and there are people who study these things, and they know Hebrew a lot better and Arabic a lot better, to talk to them about it. Maybe Chazi would be somebody who would know, but like, yeah, we'll see.
The verb to be, because in Hebrew there is no present tense of the verb to be.
To be.
Yeah, so you can't say I am hungry. Well, let's say I am tall, right? You can't say that.
You can. Yeah.
Yeah, you just say I tall, and it's implied. So
in Arabic you say anatawi, for example. That's how you say it.
Right. And so the Tetragrammaton is very clearly related to the root to be, the Semitic root of existing, right? But we don't pronounce it. But when you look at it, you can tell that it is related to, and so we say that God is existence. He was, he exists, and he will be. Hu haya, hu hove, hu yihye, right? But we don't actually pronounce the Tetragrammaton. But the Tetragrammaton itself, sometimes when I'm translating, I will just translate it as capital B being. Because Christians also have this idea that it's like God's name. Like I would call, Khalil, right? It's like, no, that's not what God said.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to ask, how do you derive the Yahweh name from Elijah? Because it doesn't contain the complete Tetragrammaton. It's just a part of it.
Right. It only has a part of it.
Yeah. So wouldn't that be the same if you were to say Allahu? That's also a part of it.
As far as I know, Arabic grammar, that doesn't work. You would need somebody who knows both languages.
I don't think that works. I don't think that actually, because it's just a sound, just who, I don't think that's like something.
Oh well, it's the same thing would be with Elijah, Elijah's name. It's just a sound of, this letter from the name is referring to God's name. Therefore,
but here's the thing, brother. But here's the thing. Like in the what was it, brother Jacob? The name
Tetragrammaton.
Yeah, the Tetragrammaton. Sorry, it's long and complicated. Yeah, it's like Yahweh, and that we don't have that in the Quran. Like just who is like just an Yahoo, but the original name as in Yahweh, it's not found in the Quran. It's just
Allah. No, I agree.
So like
it is Allah, but what does it mean when you say Allahu?
But then you say Allahi, Allah. Say that too, right? Because there were different harakat on the hat, right? But like agree on that, sure.
No, I mean, you're actually correct. Okay, but what I would have to add is, let's say, Ahmed, you speak fluent Arabic.
Yeah, I'm Arabic.
Okay, so you know the word for life, right? Or to be, to exist.
Yeah, I'm just
but what is the word for living? Like for actually living, like
until
life
but what is the singular for that?
Telling you I'm going to be at home tomorrow, I'll say
yeah, this is
okay.
we started
So
talking
the verse
about
translates to,
the
"I'll
word
become what I'm
honestly, I don't think
it's
most people
so Hebrew
would
has
be interested
perfect, progressive, and
in that.
imperfect. So which is loosely like
In
past tense,
the
present tense, and
thing.
future tense.
You can watch
so
it there.
perfect is a completed action. Progressive is something that's ongoing, and
Yes.
and imperfect is an incomplete action. So ihya is the incomplete present tense of the verb to be.
Okay, sure. I'll make sure to check that out, inshallah. Because here's the thing, because Arabic and Hebrew, they're very amazing languages. But Hebrew over the time has been lost. Unfortunately, some changed. Look, I'm not gonna say Arabic is hasn't gone changed, because if you go to Iraq, they'll speak in a certain way of Arabic. Saudi Arabia, they speak.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna get into too much of this being lost and stuff. But we'll see.
Their own way. Morocco, they speak their own way. But there's the original Arabic is still there. We know like how let's say the words were said and the meaning of the words. So, like for example, I'm not trying to criticize Hebrew, because it has its own, let's say, what do you call it? I'm not trying to good things about it, right? Let's understand it. It has its own thing. It's good in its own way.
You have an echo.
So, no, Sami, it's from Chamal.
Sorry.
Yeah, Shannon,
Chamal, please mute.
You have an
Alright, brother, Muslim, please mute.
Yeah, Shannon.
People who speak Hebrew, they get it. The same thing with Arabs. So, what I'm saying is, from the Arabic thing, Arabic, it's still preserved. We know how the Prophet spoke, for example. We know exactly and what exactly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Not gonna get. I mean, if people are interested, the linguistic argument is something Muslims make a lot. While I believe in linguistic miracles, I don't really understand how you can make the linguistic argument when historically and archaeologically, Islam is just not. Not gonna get into it.
The meanings of their words are, of his words are. So I mean, I think that's a good thing. That's a sign from God that maybe there's a beauty to Islam, and like Arabic was chosen. That's my opinion. If you can disagree,
it is said to be a divine language in itself, because it actually has some, there are some parts of the language that is too perfect to be of human nature, with the roots and everything. So both those languages seem to have been chosen by divine. It's been divinely chosen somehow. I can't really get into it, because I've seen Hamza Yusuf talk on it, and it's really incredible. If anyone's interested,
I have spoken about on my channel is the fact that Semitic languages, partially because of the abjad, right? So they are written normally written without the, I guess you guys call it harakat, but in Hebrew, does it without the vocalizations? It's an abjad, so only the consonants are written. So one of the beautiful parts of the Hebrew Bible, and I'm guessing there are similar things in the Quran, is that you can read the same sentence in several ways. They have similar meanings, but they are slightly different, and they are beautiful in each of their readings.
Exactly. Yeah. That's, for example, there's a verse in the Quran. Well, I mean, it talks about you guys, like the Christians, but it says in one qira'ah it's al-bariyah, and then the other is al-bari'ah. And I think you've seen the Jay Smith video about it, where like Jay Smith and Al-Fadi, they made a video about it. They claimed that it was something that's a theological issue. So have you not seen that video?
No.
Well, you should check it out. It's on Facebook. Yeah. So it was pretty funny, the way he exposed them. So anyways, yeah, I was just.
Alaikum assalam, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Brothers. Jacob, can I ask you a question real quickly? Sure. If I was to say, yeah, Jacob, What does that mean to you? Like in Arabic, if I was to say Ya Khalil or Ya Ahmad,
this is like not making a lot of sense type stuff.
Is Yisrael? It's not Israel.
Yeah, see, like yes, right. Like if
opinion, right? Which it literally means, oh, he. You know,
I mean, the thing is,
no, I understand that. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, no, sure, yeah,
because like let's say we were sitting next to each other and Jacob was right in front of us, and like all the panelists, you were saying, and you asked me.
I'm not disputing that. Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Jacob, can I ask Jacob something before I leave? And
Jacob,
also want to say,
follow
why do you put me at the
up.
bottom of the hierarchy, Khalil or whoever it is? Like,
No, you look like you're gonna fuck Jacob. So I wouldn't.
You know what? Can I say something? Because he's being asked lots of questions.
yeah, he's-
I love it. I mean, this has become the Jacob show. I love it.
Can I say something? Can I say something, please? Yeah,
Go
May I
ahead,
say something, please?
go ahead. Sure, go
If
ahead.
you don't mind, I would like to interact with Mr. Jacob.
Go
And I
ahead.
hope that I won't offend you in any way. Jazakallah khair. I'm a person who goes straight forward. And you got my attention. I've been listening to you since you came in. You said something that I totally disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. I respect you as a person, I respect everything. I have nothing against you. You said that God of the Jew and the Muslims is the same God. No. 100% no. With all due respect to you.
100% no. It's like the silliest thing.
We don't have the same God. We have the same creator. You may call your creator the name of Hashim or whatever. We call him Allah, you call him Elohim, we call him Allah Ilah. But he's different. I'll tell you why. Allah in the Quran, the one that we accept, believe in all prophets, including Abraham, Moses.
So this is the thing. It's like he's like, if you don't believe in all the prophets that we believe in, then you don't believe in the same God. And this is just so obviously silly for a lot of Muslims in a lot of ways, because the Quran says that there are like hundreds of thousands of prophets. So if you don't know, if you don't, right, this is actually not a Muslim thing, and which is why I didn't bother too much, and why I was like kind of looking at him like, you know, this is not a very strong point for a Muslim to make, but he's never been challenged on it.
Isaac, Ishmael, Noah, Jesus, and Muhammad. Peace and blessing be upon them all. Hashim in your religion and your book does not accept Jesus and Muhammad alayhi salam. So that's it.
So it's like, if your God doesn't isn't the God of the same prophets, then it's a different God. Like the whole argument is just really, really bad, right? If I believe in God, right, and it's the same description, and somebody else believes in God and it's a different description, yet they have the same prophet supposedly, but that doesn't work. If we have the same God and if we have the same description but different prophets, then actually, and this is something like, as a Muslim, like the Quran kind of, this is not mainstream Muslim thought.
It's an idea. Number two, you give an attribution to, with all due respect, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend you. I hope that you will accept what I'm going to say. I don't want to do it anyway. Okay, thank you. Alhamdulillah. God bless you. You give Hashim an attribution which does not fit my Allah as a Muslim. I'll give you an example. You said that Allah created heaven and earth in 6 days, and the 7 days he was tired.
So, like he starts getting into things where he interprets Judaism as saying things that we would say is blasphemous. And because his interpretation of Judaism is blasphemous within Judaism and Islam, he believes that my interpretation of Judaism is also blasphemous, which just isn't true. Like, so, for example, to say in Judaism that God became tired, right, is actually a yeah. So this video was it was a chill stream on EA Dawa. I really like Khalil. I really like EA Dawa and the stuff he does. I'm a supporter of his. I go on his channel on a regular basis. And I was just there and people started asking me questions.
And you have to rest. And you read this in Genesis chapter 2, verse 2 and 3. We as Muslims, we say, لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. Which means Allah never sleeps, Allah never rests. Allah doesn't feel tired whatsoever. So that's attribution of my Allah. And regard to saying that he needed to rest in the 7 days. With all respect to you as well.
That's not true.
Okay. With all respect to you, I'm just giving you the sources, and you can enlighten me maybe and explain it to me if it's okay.
I think brother is referring to the verse where it says God rested on the seventh day, right?
Yes, and give the sources. Genesis chapter 2, verse 2 and 3.
Now let's listen to
You have to rest.
Jazakallah khair.
So lishpot means to cease, and God ceased His creation on, in a sense, creating new things.
So I'll make his thing even stronger. In Judaism, we would say that to say that God became angry is blasphemy, and there are many places in the Bible where it talks about God being angry, right? And if you were to say that God actually became angry, that is blasphemy in Judaism. And it's funny, I actually think Quran says that. So, and he would agree with that. And I would say that that is blasphemy. But that's not how we understand those verses. So you get into this thing where he's telling me that my religion believes in something that I don't believe in order to explain why my God is not his God.
Things on the seventh day, and because of that, we don't do creative work on the seventh day. But we don't cease to be, and so there is a concept that God stopped, and that's what Shabbat means. God ceased to do creative of new things in the world on the seventh day, and even that we would never say is complete, because obviously everything would cease to exist if God was not creating it at that moment. So while it's possible that people may misunderstand such a thing, that chas v'chalila, God would need to rest or something like that, that would be blasphemy in Judaism.
Okay, can I ask you a direct question, please, Mr. Jacob? You just made your comment in my second opinion, but in my first point, you ignored that totally. Now I'll go back to the first point. Do your God Hashem believe? Excuse me?
Would you like me to answer? I can answer your first point.
Okay. Can I ask the question, please? If you don't mind, with all due respect. Thank you very much. God bless you. And I appreciate you being so patient with me. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. No, first of all, you're being very respectful, and there's no reason for me to be offended when somebody means no offense. Second, these are common questions that people ask and common misunderstandings, which I'm more than glad to try to clear up. Now, do I believe that Jesus was a prophet? Not really. Do I believe Muhammad was a prophet? No. But that doesn't matter. And the reason why there's no such thing as Jewish dawah, there's no such thing as Jewish evangelism, is because...
See, and this is what he wasn't understanding, is like, it doesn't matter. Like, he's focusing on the prophets. And honestly, this is part of the blasphemy in Islam, is they worship Muhammad. They really do. Like, it is integral to their religion. You cannot understand God without following Muhammad, right? And that's why I could never be a Muslim, right? Whereas in Judaism, right, it's not about Moses or any other prophet. We have had lots of prophets, and Moses is not perfect, right? The Bible very clearly shows Moses is not perfect. But they have this God-like Muhammad, which they, I would say, worship.
Because we believe there's one God in the entire world, that God himself has a relationship with each of his creations, that God has given message and capability to each and every person. And so there is no necessity whatsoever for me to go around trying to preach to somebody else about God, because God, in fact, it is prohibited in our religion to do so. And I don't go around trying to tell other people about religion. If somebody wants to ask me a question, I'm more than glad. One of the reasons I support Khalil is because he is helping educate people about the oneness of God, and that is something that is very important. La ilaha illallah. And so I like to support him in doing that as much as possible, without being evangelical myself, which is against my religion, because obviously, since there is one God and he is the creator of all human beings and all things, it is impossible for me to say that there are people in the world that have a different... They may misunderstand God, and when I hear people say certain things, including Jews, right, including myself, sometimes I have misunderstandings. Obviously, I'm a human being, and as human beings, we will never have perfect understanding of God. But it is not necessary for me to give anybody other than myself dawah, because God has that capacity, and that's that is the reason why we do not. Yes, dawah is not permissible in Judaism.
Can I address that then? Because if you don't have any dawah, like so your laws, yeah. So for example, like you would believe that murdering is wrong, right? So how would you then tell someone? Would it be impermissible to tell someone that it's forbidden according to God's law to kill someone, or is that even dawah? Like that would be some sort of dawah, right?
So that's the thing. So for example, there are what we would classify as 7 or Noahide laws, Genesis 1 through 9. Since Noah is the progenitor of all of humanity, we believe that all humanity has at least received these 7.
Somebody asked in the comments when I was on there, how is Noah the progenitor of all humanity? Because God destroyed all humanity, and only thing was
commandments, 7 broad things of commandments, including not to murder, including the belief in one God. And so this is why, if somebody, these are the types of things that I feel comfortable, if anybody is interested in knowing what I think about it, to go ahead and try to give guidance about. But anything beyond that, anything beyond the laws of Noah, which in Judaism it is clear, Islam fits all that we consider the laws of Noah, and there are opinions that even Islam that at least the children of Ishmael have an extra commandment, an eighth commandment beyond the 7 given to all of humanity, which is circumcision, because they are descended of Abraham. But beyond that, so what I've said many times on the show is in Judaism, if a Muslim is actually keeping from everything they believe, as far as I know, everything that Islam teaches, then such a person is what we would call the righteous among the Gentiles and has a place in the world to come. And so I have no reason whatsoever to try to make a Muslim not believe in Islam.
Yeah. So let me get to the real question then. Why not become a Muslim? Because can I just get this point through? Like if you become a Muslim,
Yeah,
you
but
already believe. Yeah, no problem. If you believe that Muslims going to be saved, why not become a Muslim and have best of both worlds?
Two things. First, because I don't believe that Muhammad was a prophet, because there are things, as I understand it, things in the Quran, but certainly things that Muslims generally believe, which is not according to the Torah. Second, because we believe that the Torah and specific teachings to Moses are for the children of Israel, and those are different. And we believe that, so in Judaism, we have this concept of the 70 nations, that ultimately all people are classified among 70 nations, although the number 70 in Judaism actually means large number. And so each of those people, God requires different things from different people in our conception. God judges you according to who you are, the message that you have been given. And so I certainly do not believe that for a Jew, I think it would be a mistake for a Jew to try to keep the Noahide laws, so which would be a lot easier for me. Let me put it this way. I personally, in my own life, I'm not a very good person. I don't know if I even...
So Gar says, I've often gotten that the all monotheistic religions worship the same God thing. I get what they're trying to say, yet I always need to clarify the details. Yeah, I have to say that. I'm not a perennialist, and this is something that Vervaeke brought up with Wolfgang Smith, which I kind of agree with both of them, right? I don't think all monotheistic religions worship the same God at all. Ultimately, I don't think most of Christianity. First, I don't think most of Christianity is monotheistic, but Christians, the Christian conception of God, at least among Unitarians, is very similar to the Jewish one. And it's like anytime you're comparing two things, right? Are they the same, right? It's a comparative term. Are they equivalent, right? Is Islam Judaism? And no, Islam is not Judaism. But ultimately, the description of the God of Islam is similar enough that I would say that they are the same God. But yeah, it is something you would have to basically, like, what exactly do you mean by that?
Even keep the 7 Noahide laws as I would and I should, but I certainly don't keep the Torah as I would and I should. And so it would certainly be a lot easier for me to not care about all of the other things that God demands of Israel as Israel. But we do believe that God demands of each of us individually what He demands of us, and what He demands of Israel and the Jews is very different than what He demands from anybody else. That is what we mean by Ataba Hartanu. You have chosen us, in that God gave us more things that we must in fact do than other people, because He Beni Bechori Israel, because Israel was the first among God's children, was the first that received God's revelation. And so, first of all, we do believe that it's a Jew keeping the Noahide laws is doing the wrong thing. It's like trying to put a right glove on your left foot. That's not the right way of doing it. But second, I do not believe that Islam is true, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't contain all of the things that I believe is necessary for all of humanity to abide by. It does.
I see. I wanted to ask you this before I leave, because I have to leave soon and pray and so. But I actually just wanted to, if you can briefly tell me, what does the Jewish ablution look like? The wudu.
The actual complete one is to actually immerse yourself fully in your entire body. And that's
that's ghusl.
And excuse me, Mr. Jacob, as far as I know, Moses used to wash his hand, face, and feet before he go to the Bayer's room. Am I correct? I cannot get the verse right now, but it's, I think.
Okay, so I actually looked up later what he's saying as far as Moses washing his feet, and there is a part where Moses, like the priests, does wash his feet. And the priests in the temple did in fact wash their feet, but that was because they were walking on holy ground and barefoot. And so the washing of the feet was part of their absolution. We don't do that because it's not in the temple.
I think Genesis or something like that. So that
Gar says, I think the Abrahamic faiths strive towards the most divine at a singular point. That is the big similarity to me. Honestly, if you haven't listened to Vervaeke and Smith on the meaning code, it was a very good discussion. I'm not sure even Karen was able to bring it down to earth for the vast majority of people, including me. There were times when they were talking and I didn't quite understand them exactly. Platonism, ultimately Neoplatonism, I mean, there's a reason why I keep on talking about post-Platonic and stuff. But yeah, and why I want to bring Dr. Khalil Andani onto my channel if he would be willing to come on. He actually comes and listens a lot to Khalil as well. The Neoplatonic understanding of God, I think, is much better than most people's theologies, and Neoplatonic Christian, I think, understands the Trinity in a way that isn't nearly as bad as most Christians and their modalism.
So that's type of what we call as a pollution. So what do you think about that?
What we do these days is before prayer, we wash our hands. And even that, because we believe that we are all impure in a state of impurity that we currently have no capacity of getting rid of, which is one of the reasons it is forbidden for Jews to go onto the Temple Mount at all. Because of that, we just wash our hands. But that's because we believe since the destruction of the temple. Although, I mean, every Friday we still, every Friday a lot of people, not everybody, a lot of people go and do a mikvah. I guess you would call it pasul. And in fact, so since the Day of Atonement is on Tuesday,
and I did not go to the mikvah. Yeah.
Night, almost all religious Jewish males will go this Tuesday to the mikvah before Yom Kippur. But the actual ablution is to wash your entire body. And what we generally do before we eat, certainly in the morning, we merely wash our hands and not touch the parts of our body that are covered. So it is slightly different. I mean, it's not slightly. There's a lot of differences, but we cover the parts of our bodies that we believe are not pure. Because
it's the intention required. Like if you have to make the intention to wash your body.
I was more religiously observant. I would wash my hands with the intention of purifying them, and for the rest of the day, anytime if my hands got dirty, if I touched anything, if I went to the bathroom, if I went inside of a bathroom even without I would again wash my hands. And part of that is keeping in mind that you are in fact maintaining tahara. That's something I tried to do many years ago when I tried to be a lot more observant than I am now. And there are people who still do. Who do that on a regular basis, but that's the reason most people will wash their hands before they start the prayers.
Thank you for answering my questions. I'm going to take care of yourself. I'm going to leave for now. Assalamu alaikum, guys.
Can I go back to Mr. Jacob, please, brother?
Also, I just want to point out that there's a few points of difference. We don't have this notion of exclusivism. Islam is very inclusive, no matter where it has went, and no matter where it is till now, from A to Z, all cultures, ethnicities.
So Snake Juice keeps on getting into this. He's like, you can't actually become a Jew and stuff, and it's his normal thing. Honestly, it's like exclusivism, like it's just such a bad argument, and it's such a misunderstanding of Judaism, and I'm so tired of it. And it is mostly based on a Christian understanding of Judaism, which we reject.
There is no chosen God's children. We don't even have a notion of God's children. We believe that is
blaspheming very good.
God, because that is bringing God down to the human level. And yes, you may say children is a figurative or metaphorical or alliteration, whatever the case. Nonetheless, we do not ascribe such terms to God, period. Earlier you said no one can understand God. Okay, sure. But now you're using terms like children. And again, the notion of exclusive children or God's chosen, this doesn't exist. We believe in a just God, period. All humans are made equal. The only difference between them is their piety and their religiosity, which only is something that God can see, something in the hearts, if you may, or the soul, the ruh. But yeah, man, Islam has been very inclusive. This is seen in the architecture of any civilization it has been in. Even the Jewish Golden Age happened under the Islamic Golden Age. And I'm sure you've seen Professor Wasserstein's How Islam Saved Jewry. That's Jewry.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
I actually tried to look it up. I mean, yes, Islam at various times was much nicer to Judaism than the Christians were.
I hear what you're saying, and Christian egalitarianism is very nice, but no, we don't believe in egalitarianism. We believe that God created different people with different capabilities, and obviously, since we are all created and God is the creator, we are nothing like Him. But some people are have certain gifts, other people have different gifts, and so I completely rejected this idea that all people are the same.
I think
So what do you mean by
people are
saying?
not.
Obviously, everyone's different. Every unique individual has their own capabilities. Obviously,
Sure.
it's not rocket science to know that.
Yeah,
But
it's not that God
in the eyes of
chose
God,
certain
meaning,
people. You know?
meaning He doesn't view one person as better than the other. There's no chosen.
God,
No, we don't have this. No,
It's a historical fact that, and it's a historical fact that Muslims agree with, that God gave the Torah to Israel, and so it's when the Torah says "Beni Bechori Israel," my firstborn son is Israel. That's just a historical fact. I don't see how anybody who's Muslim or Christian can disagree with. And we believe that because of this, Israel is a mamlachet kohanim, is a nation of priests, that we are, in fact, there's a reason why we have 613 mitzvot, and most of the world has 7 mitzvot, because it would be unfair for God to expect somebody who was born in India or on an island in the Pacific or in Africa to have the same requirements, because God obviously made us all different. This is just, I mean, obvious differences that I am not going to apologize for this. This is just sensible, and if you can't understand why these things are and should be different, I think you need to think about them a little bit more.
So this is okay. So let me be more clear. I tried to clear this up. As I have said many times before, and I will continue to say, there is nothing that says that any Jew is better or nicer than any Muslim. There's nothing in Judaism which says that. Each person has the piety that he has, and each person has the role that he has. And there are very many Muslims who are much nicer, better people than I am. And we would never teach that, because somebody was born with more wealth, he's a better person than somebody who was born poor. What we mean when we say that God chose us
obviously,
is that we were given
there are goyim
wealth.
and there are Gentiles. There are goyim.
And Israel is called a goy in the Torah. The word goy is not derogatory at all. It's not. But anyway, we believe that because God gave us a message first, that we were first born in the message of God, which is something that
this is the part of the funny thing is, like, pretty much all religions believe, oh, people who follow our religions are in fact favored of God, right? The funny thing is that Judaism, because we believe that God created all humanity, was the first to actually have this idea that it's wrong to say you are born favored of God, and we do in fact reject that idea, but that's a Jewish idea. And it's funny that, like, yeah, it's like
that actually, as far as I know, Muslims believe, and that this was an incredible gift that we must be very, very grateful for. And because of this, we have a greater requirements upon us than any other nation. And if you don't believe that, I understand. You don't believe that we were given the first teaching, but that is our belief, that God came first to Israel, and through Israel has given light to the rest of the world. And for that, we are grateful. That is what we mean when we say Israel is and it says in the Torah, Beni Bechori Israel.
But then, Jacob, here's the thing: we believe then after that the sons of Israel have they just disobeyed God continuously, and like with worship, for example, like Jews eating.
So this is the thing. I didn't want to get into the riches versus sins thing, right? So we believe that you can inherit good things from your parents, whereas you don't inherit bad things from your parents, and this is in the 10 Commandments. And I didn't want to get into it, but so if my great-grandparents 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, let's say more than 4 generations, yes, 3 and 4th generation, that's why it says I will visit onto right, maybe I should pull this up. Visit So this is in Deuteronomy 5. And God says, let's just pick this one. Deuteronomy 5, 6. I am the Lord thy God, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make thee any graven images, or thou shalt not buy. Bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So this is what we refer to as zchut avot, that because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had certain zechuyot, as their children, we do in fact inherit riches, and that is fair because God is merciful. Whereas sins, we do not inherit. So I wasn't going to get into that level of detail there.
Even got into calf worship, and in Jewish history, that's something that's known. The only, one of the most important commandments is to not worship anyone else than God. But they still did that, and then we believe after that God has just taken it away from them and gave it to the Arabs. The other side, Abraham, and then he said Muhammad.
Right. So this is one of the things we don't believe, is that because we are somehow better than other people or worse than other people, God is going to take or give, or that's not how we believe God works. And yes, it is in our Bible that we have sinned, and we as Jews do sin, and we have a much greater requirement. Partially because we believe, I understand if you don't, we believe we were first given this light, and so you're not saying anything new to me to say that Israel has sinned. Yes, I sinned
severely,
but that's not something.
Even if you got the message first, that's not the whole point. We all know about this.
Yeah, it's like saying I got the best first, but then
listen, sure you got the message first, but you rejected the following prophets and the following messages. You guys were asked to believe in the Messiah, Isa, and Muhammad, the last prophet, which you outright rejected.
We also don't believe in hereditary sin. Yeah. We also don't believe in hereditary sin. So the idea that something that my grandfathers did 1,000 years ago is still affecting me is not something we would agree with.
Jacob, we're not saying that because your grandfather sinned, you're going to hell.
Hereditary or original sin?
Yeah, you did.
I never
rewind the tape.
I mean, they did talk about sin, but so he's going to say that, but you're rejecting Jesus and Muhammad now, and it's like, where's Jesus? Where's Muhammad? Right? How do I know that Jesus and Muhammad are prophets? How am I supposed to know that?
I never brought that up. I'm saying Jews reject as a whole. You just said earlier you reject Islam as being untrue and Muhammad and Isa. You're still doing this now. I'm not talking about your grandfather 1,000 years ago. I'm talking about right now, 22, October 2nd. Come on.
Thank you, man. Please interject. Please.
Sorry, could you raise up your volume, brother? I cannot hear you well.
Yeah, you're kind of low, brother.
Yep. But I just wanted to say something real quick, just real quick. I just wanted to say something. Jacob, we're not saying because your grandparents sin, you're going to hell. We're just saying your grandparents,
no one even knows sin.
Look, this is the point I'm trying to deliver. I don't know if you're of Jewish descent, but Jews in general have sinned a lot, and the entire Jewish history. The Bible, even flipping Rabbinic Judaism, where now you guys believe that rabbis can defeat God. I mean, how
is this better?
We do not believe that rabbis can defeat God. I have a whole video, Ovens of Achnai. You can go look at it.
That's in my opinion, that's absurd. I don't know about you. With all due respect, I'm not trying to disrespect your religion, but to me, that's absurd.
It's absurd, yes, and we don't believe any such thing.
Anyways, but what I wanted to deliver to you is your grandparents, of course, they have sinned a lot. Then after, they rejected prophecies, they just rejected everything. Okay, and for that, the first temple got destroyed, the second temple got destroyed, the Bible was the entire Hebrew language was gone, and then just got reconstructed. Many things happened, and then prophets stopped coming from you guys. But then you guys still have a chance to go to heaven. I'm not with sin. We're not saying you inherit the sin.
What I will say, by the way, we can hear you now, brother. What I will say, brother, I mean, you brought up, it looks like many points that he does not believe whatsoever. The stream is ending in a few minutes, so if everybody wants to give their last thoughts on everything, I know this.
Yeah, I just want to jump in real quick. I don't really have a big monologue. Jacob mentioned something that was extremely untrue. Hey, Jacob, can you hear me as well?
Yeah, you're good. Go.
Yeah, you said something about I'm gonna paraphrase. You said that you guys don't believe that a Jew is better than a non-Jew, and much of what you said now contradicts the story. I forget what the actual parable's name is, but the story where all the nations were brought together and God presented the truth to all the nations, and then out of everybody, it was only the Jews who selected what the truth was. Almost in a sense where God didn't choose them, but rather because of their high intellect and because of their natural design and how they were created, they chose God in a sense. Like the whole story of God's chosen people is true, but you guys presented more in a sense where it wasn't God's decision to choose you, it was his decision to create you so well that out of all the nations in the world, you guys chose the truth. In a sense, that would be saying that they are better than everybody else. Show me the lie and show me where I said anything untrue about your people and how you guys present your story.
Go ahead, brother.
Okay, so the midrash you're talking about, I know the midrash you're talking about, and it is a midrash, and there are many different midrashim, and the various midrashim, like the various ahdit, none of which are scripture, talk about various points, and these various points talk about certain things, and you can, if you want to go searching through the midrash, the rabbinic midrash, which is huge, and I have to say, in order to search through the entire midrash, I am sure you did not actually pick up any of the books of the midrash.
Sorry, Carol. You can watch the actual video yourself. It's linked in the description. I'm just trying to get through it, and honestly, I'm just gonna answer this right here, and you guys can go watch the rest of the next 15 minutes where Khalil kind of blows up at them. What's going on here is people will go looking through rabbinic literature to find things for them to misunderstand. And it's a problem because to understand something in context, to understand what it means, what it actually, what level of importance we give to it, and how we understand it, you have to understand the whole. And if you're going to go take something out of context like this guy is, to say that Judaism teaches that Jews are better than Gentiles. First of all, I have to say, there are Jews who believe this, but they're racists. And it's like, they're not people who are teaching out of Judaism. Right. So what this brings up in my mind is the story of Nessim Black, who look, he had a very hard time putting getting his kids into good religious schools, and until he had to go to Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and for Reb Chaim to step in and let his kids and make sure that the schools would let his kids in, and that's a huge problem. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but it's doubly a problem because Nissim Black has the money and the notoriety to get Rav Chaim, of blessed memory, to step in on his behalf, and not every black convert does as well. But if you're going to pretend that that's something unique to Jews, right? I have news for you. Go spend some actual time living in a Muslim anything, right? The fact you can find people who are not acting correctly is not a good argument, and it's not what Judaism teaches. So you're misrepresenting Judaism. He is trying to argue with me what Judaism actually teaches. And I've gone through these texts so many times with so many different people, and it's like, no, this is not what we teach. This is not what we teach. It's what you would like us to teach, but it's not actually what Judaism teaches. If you want to disagree with me, like, I have no problem saying that Judaism teaches that Israel is God's firstborn son, and God's, that there is a sense in which we are God's chosen people, that God chose us, right? And I explained that, and I am willing to explain that because that is an actual teaching of Judaism. But like, when you're trying to tell me, like, come on. Okay, I am going to end the stream here. If you want to see the rest of the video, you can go to the link in the description. It is going to be Yom Kippur soon. I will talk to you guys later. Gamar Chatima